It's Thursday. Welcome once again to the best movie podcast ever. This is the only movie podcast that offers objective, hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I'm your host, the podcaster with no name, Konrad, and with me as always, he can't handle the truth, it's Anthony James.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Nice. This week, as we mentioned in last week's episode, we are going to be doing a special themed episode. It's going to be on movie presidents, which might strike some people as slightly inconvenient timing. We did have to do a small amount of soul searching after we announced this to think, is it in poor taste to do this video? But I think ultimately we've come to the conclusion that this isn't supposed to be taken that seriously, and we're not just going to be sitting here dunking on the actual US electoral system or political climate in general. So hopefully this can serve as a welcome distraction for the stuff that is going on in America at the moment, which is not good.
Yeah, and just, once we've started the actual podcast, we'll not talk about it anymore. But our hearts do go out to the people in America. Like, we do take it very seriously.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that, we think that a president getting inaugurated is cause for, a bit of movie president talk. Most of them will be fictional presidents too, so that'll probably be away from the real world. Yeah,
exactly. Then, even the real ones are fairly old. So we won't. Yeah, if you're looking for a distraction from some of the more harrowing imagery that we've seen in the last few weeks, hopefully this will do for you. But yeah, so apart from that, please subscribe to us on YouTube or on podcasting apps, wherever you prefer to listen. Give us a like, get involved in the comments down below, and talk about any movie presidents that you like or ones that you dislike that we've mentioned. And
ones that we missed out. I'm sure we're going to miss out a lot.
I'm sure we'll miss loads. Don't worry about that. Like, there's plenty.
That's what we're best at.
Yeah. We have to just ignore 90% of the fields to give everyone else a chance to join in the discourse. But and share it with your friends. But apart from that, let's talk about some movies.
Let's do it.
Movie presidents. We know what that is. We know what that office is. It's impossible not to know what that office is after the week that we've just seen.
It is an ellipsis office.
It is. Yeah, it's a cylindrical building in which sits a man behind a mahogany desk. I don't know what the desk is made out of.
I'm sure it's mahogany.
Yeah, you'd expect it to be mahogany.
The highest grade of wood.
So this is going to be informal. We're going to fire from the hip a little bit on this. I have got and Anthony, you can tell me what kind of structure you've got for yours. Loosely, I've got mine divided into could have been presidents, fictional presidents, and real presidents.
Okay, so characters who you think would have made a good president.
Yeah, so I've already cheated. I've already breached the sacred bond of our premise.
Right, okay, so I didn't know about that. So what we'll do, I'm going to prove to you. This is the thing. And Konrad, I'm a teacher, and a lot of our listeners do as well. And when you're a teacher, you have to learn how to make stuff up as you go. So
roll with the punches,
we'll do the characters who we think will make good presidents at the end. And by the time we get there, I'm going to have something that you think I prepared, but I didn't.
Okay, that's great. And we can all judge Anthony at the end of it based on the quality of his response. Yeah. I will preface this by saying mine aren't that good in that category, so you may well upstage me.
I have got presidents who are real and presidents who are fictional, so I did stick to the brief for those.
Well, let's was that an important presidential text message?
Well, actually, the thing is, last time that happened on a podcast, it was on Dark Discussions, and it was actually you texting me, but I can't blame you this time. So
you can't see my hands.
You know who I blame? I blame my work, because I'm homeschool. I'm remote learning teaching now, and I've had to turn my WhatsApp notifications on because I've never had them on before, but I need them on now. That wasn't the teacher from my school though, just so you know.
Yeah, no, I hate having WhatsApp notifications on for anything. I don't like being I don't like being contactable 24/7. It's awful.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I would not be a good president for that reason, because if I had to give a live State of the Union address and my phone's beeping in the background, like, that's points away from me. I think if out of the two of us, Connor would be the best president based on that. Right, okay.
I think, yeah, I mean, I could do the big talk. I wouldn't have a clue what I was doing when it actually came time to do any work. So I mean, maybe I'd be a good president based on that.
We'll do it. We'll do it. We'll be tandem president then. I'll be the behind the scenes guy. Yeah. You can be the Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Of the presidency, and I'll be the guy behind the scenes.
You could be my Condoleezza Rice, or Dick Cheney. Like I'm trying to think of powerful.
I'm not. Well, actually, that's very topical because that's one of my. That'll come up later. But
Yep.
I'm not going to be your Dick Cheney
See,
in
I'm
any way.
planting the seeds of movies we're going to discuss already. Fictional presidents, then. Let's start there.
Okay, fictional presidents. Okay.
So I haven't really got an order that I'm going to go.
No, that's just
going with these. So let's just go for it. Like, what's your first fictional president that you thought was worth discussing?
Well, I think when we first mentioned movie presidents, and I think most people would have this president in their mind. Well, there's two actually, which are probably the most famous. I think we're going to talk about both of them today. But the first one in my mind, which is the most famous movie president, is Bill Pullman as President Thomas J. Whitmore in Independence Day.
Sure. Yeah, a great speech giver, a great orator.
Yeah. When aliens come a knocking, you're not going to the Prime Minister of Canada. You're not going to the Prime Minister of the UK. You're going to the man in the Oval Office, Bill Pullman.
Straight to Tom Whitmore. He'll sort you out.
Tommy Whitmore.
He fits into an interesting subcategory in this discussion as well of presidents who are also military men and in fact actually pilots, which we have more than one of in this list.
Yes,
that's
true.
Do you think the reason for that? I was thinking about this when I was watching another movie that we'll get to a bit later. Do you think the reason that they make characters like this military pilot is because it helps to remove you from potentially them committing horrific acts? Because, like, if you're in the infantry, there's a non-0% chance that you maybe stabbed a man to death or something like that. Whereas if you're a pilot, it's a bit more noble. It's a bit more...
It's a little bit more like there's less chance of you being the one who bombed people. You know what I mean? Yeah. I know what you mean. I think you actually might be right there, because there is less of a chance. Like if you say I was infantry, 100% you've shot someone.
Yeah.
If you've got to the point where you're president, so maybe. Yeah. I think maybe there's something there.
But
definitely. Sorry.
Well, there's a rich vein of former military men in the role of the presidency in this list, and this is one of them.
Yeah, this is the first one, but I genuinely really like this character. I think obviously his speech is one of the most memorable presidential speeches in any film,
given to the British and possibly also somewhere in the Middle East as well. I can't remember. All I remember is when he's giving his "This is our Independence Day" speech. It cuts to people listening around the world, which seems a little presumptuous.
Yeah, well, he's taken charge. He's taken the reins, and that's what you want from an American president. You need an American president who is going to say, you know what, if the world's coming under fire, I'm going to be your man, and that's what he's
literally leading the charge. Like
it's literally He goes up in the plane, and like in his speech, it's such a good speech. To be honest with you, it does. I remember it was when I first saw this as a child. I'm pretty sure I cried at the age of 10 watching this. And he's just like, "We will not go quietly into the night," and I'm just like, oh. And then as my 10-year-old brain, it's called Independence Day, the film, but my 10-year-old brain is just like, oh my god, and then he goes, "It will be our Independence Day," and my 10-year-old brain's like, oh my god, it's called Independence Day,
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Give that scriptwriter an Oscar.
As you say, he actually gets in the ship. He actually gets in a plane.
He does, yeah. It's weird that I don't actually remember that much about Independence Day, but I remember him shouting Fox 2 as they're to launch missiles, as he's or Fox 1 or whatever it is. He shouts to blow up some of the alien fighter jets when they're mounting the final attack, which I always thought was quite cool. He also
they also do that in a lot of films, like.
They say Fox. I don't
Fox,
remember that from other things. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. We'll talk about it a little later. But in Air Force One, they also say Fox 1, Fox 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a bit.
And up until today, when I watched Air Force One again, I always thought it was Box 1, Box 2. I don't really understand why it's Fox 1. Someone could tell us in the comments. Like, why do they say that? Do you know?
Fuck off, killed is what it's. No, wait, hold on. That's a K, not an X. But an X looks like a K. So fuck off, killed. There you go. I think that's what it stands for. I don't know what it means. No. That's a lie. That's a complete lie. I don't know. It's probably like the military are always using like the phonetic alphabet for things. So it's probably something to do with that. Who knows? It's like when you say you're Oscar Mike, which I heard for the first time when I was playing like one of the Call of Duty games in like the mid 2000s, and I heard them say Oscar Mike, which I guess means to move out. But I decided that it was Cockney rhyming slang for on your bike.
Oscar Mike on your bike, but on your bike is also a slang, like saying
it doesn't make
it's
any
so
sense.
layered. That's the thing about copying rhyme slang. It's like 5 layers deep.
A rich language.
But Oscar Mike, does that mean like on the move?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the similar thing with Fox. It means it's like an initialism for something else. Who knows? I'll say this for Thomas J. Whitmore: he's not afraid to use the nuclear option. I'm trying to think. We have a few. Well, I have a few presidents in my list who have exercised the nuclear or kind of the future equivalent of the nuclear arsenal. He does, and he does it with. What's the word I'm looking for? With
abandon.
Yeah, like reckless abandon, or there's a word I'm looking for where it's like, oh, you're really pissed off about it, and with prejudice. That's the word I'm looking for. With prejudice, when they do the alien speaking through data from Star Trek bit, and then he gets into Tom Whitmore's mind, and he has they shoot the alien, they do that whole thing, and then he goes, let's nuke the bastards. It's like, all right, it's not very. Let's be a little bit presidential about this, Thomas. Right?
Let's nuke the bastards.
But they do it. They nuke them.
They do. They do. And they use a few nukes in this film.
yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, this has a parallel to another film I'm going to talk about later, which we'll get back to. But the idea of going out into space and putting a nuke deep within something. Now, in this film, it happens to be an alien spaceship. In another film, it happens to be something different. But yeah. So I don't know. I think he's pretty iconic. I think the speech he gives, and then the fact I like a film where the president actually does sort of become involved in the fighting. I don't know. I really like the idea that that like a president who's currently in office watches a film like this and is just like, if that ever happens, I'm gonna be there. And then like, whenever anything happens, they just run to the bunker.
I just like the idea of a president of the United States flying alongside Randy Quaid. Like that's. They wouldn't let a man like that within 300 miles of a president in this day and age. But
he's a crop duster.
He
does have one of the best moments though. He like, back.
Yeah, no, he has a proper like. I wouldn't necessarily say he has a character arc because it's just like he's mental and then he does that.
Well, yeah, because it starts off the film where he's a guy who's always claimed that he went and got probed by aliens.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, even at the end of the film, I'm like, I know there's aliens exist in the world, but I don't think I still don't believe him because these aliens haven't been to Earth before.
No, he's still lying as far as I'm concerned. Like he's just mental, and they basically just wound him up and pointed him at the enemy and been like, "Yep, those are the guys who probed you. I guess go sacrifice yourself, Randy." I mean, I think Randy Quaid was a hero, died a hero. And
he's not going to be on my list of characters who could be president.
No, in real life, he perhaps lived long enough to become a villain. Randy Quaid, he may have preferred to have gone out this way than become what he has. But yeah, Thomas Whitmore is a great shout, and I think, to be honest, if we're talking about military men becoming presidents, we've already mentioned it. The next obvious stopping point here is James Marshall in Air Force One.
Mm-hmm. And this is a film that we both rewatched for this.
Yes, it's the one movie I actually got a chance to rewatch this or to watch this week.
Well, yeah, you had 9 films last week, so
That's true.
I suppose it's all right. But yeah, like, so what did you think? What do you want to say about this president?
I think, I mean, he's another guy who's a pilot, so we're talking about that being a pilot, allowing you to kind of abstract the combat he was in, so it's less horrific. He was a helicopter pilot in Nam, which. I guess he and Tom Whitmore are probably he's a bit older than Tom Whitmore actually. So I'm trying to think what war Tom Whitmore would have been in. Maybe what wars
Iraq.
was it? Wouldn't have been Iraq because that movie was 1996.
In the 80s.
I guess he could have been like in fighting in like Cold War territories and stuff.
Yeah, he might have been just stationed in. Yeah. Like, he might not have been in a war, No,
that's true. He might have just, like, run guns into Afghanistan or something like that. But, yeah, James Marshall, he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, Medal of Honor recipient, which I don't believe Thomas Whitmore was. I would say...
He gives out the medals.
He does, yeah. I would say James Marshall is more patriotic than Thomas Whitmore. There's a bit more kind of, Thomas Whitmore has like that emotional high note of the big speech to the entire planet. But James Marshall has one of this moment is fucking ridiculous. He has one of my favorite moments in any of the movies I've watched in recent months, where he's trying to figure out how to dump the fuel from Air Force One to force them to land.
I know exactly.
And he's talking to an engineer on the phone or whatever, and it cuts out before they can tell him which wires to cross. And he has a red, a white, a blue, a green, and a yellow wire, and he needs to cross 2 of them. And without any information given to him, because the line is cut out, he just decides red, white, and blue would never let an American president down. So he crosses the green and the yellow, and it works. It's like, what?
Well, it was probably built by an American, so take the chance.
That is true. That is true. It was just like that level of faith in one's country is something to be admired. I think that even when the colors red, white, and blue are near each other, they sort of form a kind of spiritual energy that you can be.
Yeah, I can feel it around you right now, Conrad. You're wearing a red, white, and blue.
Exactly.
top.
Yeah,
I can feel it.
Yeah, this wasn't deliberate actually, but there we go. You're welcome, American viewers.
Yeah, well, it's also the colors of the UK,
That is true.
To be fair, red, white, and blue are the colours of
quite a lot.
Probably over 50% of the countries in the world.
Yeah, there wasn't that much originality in flag design back in the day.
Well, let's be exactly. Well, it was to do with what colours you can get. That's why so little flags have purple on them, and the ones that have purple on them are countries which are newer, which they could actually have a synthetic purple dye to create their flag with. So
is that true?
Yeah, that's true. So it was far too
yeah.
expensive to have purple on your flag. So that's why
orange and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So any countries with purple on their flag, the countries are like less than 150 years old.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Whereas, we were just like, I don't know. These are the dyes we have. We have lapis lazuli and berries.
Yeah, but it also might be something to do with the fact that like the British Empire spread around the world, and then they based the colours on the what.
There's Union Jacks on a lot of flags, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
I don't take any pleasure in that being the case. Okay. So, talking about James Marshall, then back to the matter at hand.
Yeah.
Played by Harrison Ford. He's better at hand. He's better at hand-to-hand combat than Thomas Whitmore. I don't think there's any disputing that. And I say that because Thomas Whitmore gets fucking owned by a single alien that can't even get to him. He can just mind control him through glass. James Marshall is essentially John McClane if he was a good husband and father.
Well, Air Force One is 100% just been like, Die Hard did pretty well. Let's do every conceivable thing.
The only thing that's different is he doesn't lose his shoes at any point in this.
We've had it on a speeding bus. We've had it in a hotel. Let's have it on a plane.
Yeah.
And as you say, he's like much more hand-to-hand combat. Did you know? I was actually doing a bit of reading about it. Did you know that Gary Oldman, who plays Ivan Korshunov, who's just like the sort of Baltic terrorist? I don't know. I don't know where I don't know where he's from. Somewhere he's either Russian, he's Kazakhstani.
We were talking about this. Yeah, I mean, he talks about unifying Russia, but he's from Kazakhstan. And so I guess he
fights for the glorious Kazakhstan, but I don't really know. I don't know the history of the area well enough to really pin it down. But
I don't think the people who wrote this movie do either. To be honest.
Yeah, you probably do have something there. But I was going to say, Gary Oldman and Harrison Ford, apparently in their scenes where they're beating each other up in this, they were properly punching each other.
Oh, really? They just dislike each other.
Yeah.
Exactly. I could believe it. I think Gary Oldman's a bit of a method type actor, so he probably was walking around the set talking in his awful Russian accent, and Harrison Ford had enough of that shit. Gary Oldman's one where I hear mixed accounts on that. Actually, sometimes he is very like that method. But apparently on this film he wasn't. Apparently this was one of the funnest films the people who worked on it had ever been on, because Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman got on like a house on fire. But he would just break character away from his sort of psychopath terrorist and then back in. So, but the thing is, I hear conflicting reports. Apparently he is method sometimes. I don't know.
Don't know what's going on. I also
I
don't think there's a nailed down description of what method acting is.
No, I think it probably depends on the role and depends on the period in his career as well. It's entirely possible he changed his approach multiple times throughout his career. But he's a very good villain, and he's a good foil to Harrison Ford, who is a very all action president. Something I know we said we weren't going to discuss real politics here, listeners, but you're gonna have to humor me for 1 second because it came up in Air Force One, and I was very happy when it did. They started basically there's a bit where they think he might be dead. No, in fact, it's after they find out he's alive, but they're worried that he's a liability. I think it's his chief of staff or something like that is basically trying to get the vice president to sign off on Article 25 to remove him from power.
It's the Secretary of Defense, Walter Dean,
that's right,
played by Dean Stockwell.
Yeah, it's the Secretary of Defense. They're trying to get him to get the Vice President to sign off on Article 25 to remove him from the position of presidency, because I guess that means they don't need to worry about the hostage situation then. It's just like, whatever. Take the plane. We don't care about that.
That was a plot point of this film, which I was thinking about as well. It's like, so as soon as you sign that page, you just don't care about if he's just not the president. His child and his wife die.
He's still a former president. It's still pretty important to not let him die. But yeah.
Although apparently presidents who have been removed by the 25th Amendment don't get all the extra security detail and stuff. So
that's true. Yeah, he wouldn't get his pension. But because of what's happened in America this week, I was like, I know what the 25th Amendment is. So that's fun. That's a nice little case of life imitating art.
As we grow older, we learn these things. Conrad,
someone should sit Mike Pence down and get him to watch Air Force One. But look, this is what you could be like. You could be like Glenn Close in this movie.
I love the idea of Mike Pence sitting there. Again, we're getting real here, but Mike Pence sitting there with a little folder with like all the signatures in it, and he's like holding it like, he's got it open like Glenn Close does in this film. And then like maybe whenever like Pelosi puts the what do you call it, impeachment article in on Monday, he then rips it up. He's like, yes,
finally my moment. And he looks up and he's got a framed photograph of Harrison Ford as James Marshall in his office. That's an interesting point, actually. I think with all of the ones that I've got, I don't know about you, every single fictional president that I have in this list, I think all of them remain unclear on which party they're supposed to be part of.
That seems to be a rule of thumb for movie presidents, is that they don't say. Now, I think there are some TV shows where they do say, like in The West Wing, I think that it was a Democratic president.
Yeah, I think Martin Sheen was a Democrat in that.
Yeah, but they don't generally say, and it's interesting. It's actually, to be honest with you, in a film like this, you're not supposed to really care about what side this president's on. It doesn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
You say every one of these movies is bipartisan. We don't care. They love America. That's what we care about.
This film did put a little bit of policy stuff in the beginning. Which a lot of president films don't, because a lot of president's film are like trying to stop an asteroid hitting Earth or something. So the idea of the policy stuff doesn't fully come into it. But this film started because he took a dictator into prison and took him out of Kazakhstan, and then said, from now on, we're going to invade a country as soon as there's any slight bit of terrorism going on. So they did take a side in this. Which side they took, I'm not going to fully analyze that, but they did. They took a political side that you could analyze. That's very rare, I think, for this type of film.
Yeah, I guess it's just easier not to get into potentially alienating half of your audience by being like, check out this cool Republican, guys.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah,
I mean, there's a couple in here where you can kind of make an educated guess as to which side of the political spectrum they fall on. But yeah, so that's Harrison Ford as James Marshall. Great president, likes to kick people off of his planes and then say, get off my plane, which I don't know if it's your plane, to be honest, James. I guess the president owns Air Force One, maybe. I'm not sure about that.
Well, I think he does. He owns everything in America, including the people, doesn't he?
Well, certain presidents think that. Anyway, okay, I think the next... So I know you've got one on your list that I haven't really seen, but I think in the interest of sort of thematically remaining with presidents who have served the people by protecting them from extra planetary threats, I reckon we go with a couple of yours that
Well, I've got one more basically of this.
Okay, you do yours, and then maybe I'll do mine after that.
Yeah, because Air Force One was my Independence Day. They're my two, and then I've also got a third one. We shared Air Force One, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So basically, my next one is President Beck, played by Morgan Freeman in Deep Impact.
Yeah.
Now, Deep Impact is a film that came out in 1998. It's about a asteroid that is huge, basically the size of New York, heading towards Earth.
Yeah.
And they have to stop it somehow.
I don't remember how they stop it, to be honest. I haven't seen this movie in a long time.
Well, I'm not going to tell you if they stop it or not, but the poster.
Imagine if they didn't. Imagine.
Well, the poster does have an asteroid hitting Earth, so. Let's
okay. Spoilers. They've given it away in the poster there.
But basically, he's obviously put in a hard position where he has to decide what to do, what's the best for his country. Now, in this film, they do actually. He doesn't speak for the world like in Independence Day. He actually so what they eventually start doing is just as a sort of a backup plan, they start creating like caves in the Missouri limestone mountains or something. Yeah. And they're sort of putting 1 million people can go in, and there's like a lottery where they like randomly choose 800,000 people. And then there's the other 200,000 is reserved for like scientists, artists, teachers, all the jobs you need. Basically.
Yeah.
Don't say you don't need artists. Come on, guys. If you don't think you need artists, what the hell are you listening to a movie podcast?
Yeah. Have they got room for YouTubers in the caves? That's what I want to know.
Well, that's literally the reason we started a YouTube channel, because we want to get to the point where people know us enough that we will get into a cave when an asteroid's going to hit the Earth.
Cult of popularity, cult of personality gets us in.
Yeah, exactly. But basically, makes this decision, but they also mention a line where he says, and the rest of the world leaders are doing similar things in their country. So it very much was trying to say like that we're not speaking for the world here. And yeah, it's really interesting the way they set it up, actually, because the way they set it up. Now, if you didn't watch the trailer, or if you didn't see the poster, or if you didn't look at the title of it called Deep Impact, you maybe wouldn't have known it was about an asteroid. I think everyone does, based on all those factors. Also, the fact that the start of the film shows a guy discovering the asteroid and then dying on the way to try and deliver the news. How
does he die? I don't remember that.
His car goes off the road and explodes. It has to happen.
That's so contrived. They're like, the one man who detected this enormous asteroid coming towards Earth. No one in China was like, should we maybe tell the other people on Earth about this? No, we have this one. We just had. Did they actually? I can't remember what it's called, but you know that massive satellite array. I think it's in Nevada somewhere. Did they use that for this?
No, it's just like a little astronomy club. So Elijah Wood's in it, and he plays Leo Biederman. And old Leo at his astronomy club is looking up at the at the stars, and he notices something that shouldn't be there. And he's like, "Hey, that's something." And then all the rest of his astronomy club, the rest of these teenagers, are like, "What? No, that's so and so asteroid. That's so and so star." And he's like, "I'm telling you, it's bloody not." So he takes a picture of it, and then his like sort of tutor or the guy who takes the club goes back to the observatory where he works or whatever, and he's like just looking through, and then he uses the photograph and finds actually this is something here, and then so it gets called, it gets named after the astronomer, but it also gets named after Elijah Wood's character. So this teenager's like, it's called the something like the Ray Biederman or something. The Biederman is his last name.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because like he's now like sort of a little famous in his community, like, and he's at the front of like they've just been told the asteroid's gonna hit the world, yeah. And he's standing at the front of an assembly, and he's just like I have to admit, it's pretty cool, having his name named after.
You don't want to be named after. You don't. Want
then another teenage boy stands up in front of the whole school, all the pupils, all the faculty, all load of parents there. But a teenage boy stands up and goes, "You're gonna have so much sex now."
I remember that line. That's like one of the few lines I remember from this.
Yeah,
is
very realistic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, about as realistic as like nothing detecting this asteroid apart from an astronomy club. It's like the Hubble telescope doesn't have a fucking clue what's going on, but like the ISS was launched by 19...
Well, they found out eventually.
Yeah, but after a guy could see it in the sky.
Yeah. So basically, what I was getting with that is they start off with that whole asteroid coming towards Earth, where this guy's racing, goes off the road, his car explodes. It's called Deep Impact. The poster has a picture of an impact with an asteroid.
Yeah.
The trailer shows that as well. And if you didn't know all that, they start the storyline off with the president, with a reporter trying to get to the bottom of an extramarital affair that she thinks is happening, and it's trying to trick you into thinking, oh, this is about like intrigue in the political realm and that man actually left the cabinet because he was like cheating on his wife with this woman, right? Yeah. And then like 20 or 30 minutes in, you find out that the woman who she's been told by an informer that the woman's name is Ellie, right? And then you find out half an hour in, she finds out it's not Ellie. It's ELE, Extinction Level Event. The Extinction Level Event was the other woman.
This is I don't remember anything
about it. It's not the best film in the world, but it's great fun. It's great fun.
Well, it is. So we were talking briefly about this before we started recording. I would say Morgan Freeman is a strong frontrunner for the actor to have played the president the most times. And I actually couldn't name you another thing that he's been the president in. But
one of the Fallen films, Olympus Has Fallen, something like that.
I'm like 100% certain he's played a president at least one or two other times apart from this, which seems to be it's sort of like playing James
London
Bond.
Has Fallen. He plays vice president.
Oh, he's the vice president.
That might be a spoiler for that film, because I did look it up and it said that he played a president in that. So I think the president must die.
Oh, spoilers for London Has Fallen. That really popular. That's the Channing Tatum one, is it?
No, it's the fella who plays Sparta. Whoever that guy's called.
Gerard Butler. Yeah. All right. Well, sorry about that. Yeah, let's be honest. You weren't going to watch that movie anyway. No. Okay. Like, oh, I didn't mean you. I meant the listeners. But I mean,
well, I'm not.
Yeah, you weren't going to either. Okay, so we've got like some extraplanetary threat in there. I think talking about asteroids hitting Earth leads me quite naturally into a couple of characters here. You may not have seen this. Have you ever watched Starship Troopers?
Yeah. No, sorry. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. Every time I hear the name of the film Starship Troopers, I think of Super Troopers. It's not the same thing.
That was a wrong time to take a sip of coffee. Those are not the same movie at all.
Yeah. Give me a liter of Diet Cola. Give me a liter of cola.
That's got Brian Cox in that movie. Is like he's a very serious actor, Brian Cox. He's a very good actor. And there's a bit at the end of that movie when they're all having the big kind of blowout fight. And I can't remember the name of the rival police chief, but he's fighting Brian Cox, and he goes like, "Are you drunk, Brady?" And Brian Cox, without missing a beat, just gets drunk enough to kick your ass. It's such a good line. And it's just like the fact it's Brian Cox saying it makes it so much funnier.
When I watched that when I was quite young, probably too young to watch that film.
Yeah.
But because I actually can't remember much about it, but he shows up. Brian Cox shows up wearing double denim, right? Denim jeans, denim jacket, and they call him Denim Dan. And that has stuck in my head for 20 years. You know, it just won't leave.
There's Super Troopers. Unfortunately, we never meet the president in Super Troopers. Otherwise, because I could spend a long time talking about how that movie. I feel like what are they called? It's not Broken Lizard. It's something like the guys who made those movies, and they also made. The names of the rest of their movies are completely going out of my head, but they made a couple of other like quite funny comedies, but they never topped Super Troopers. And I feel like maybe Super Troopers' reputation has suffered a bit as a result of the quality of their other work. But Super Troopers,
they did a sequel. I never saw it. No.
But no. So Starship Troopers, talking about asteroids hitting Earth, in Starship Troopers, the goddamn bugs on the other side of the solar system, or in fact, might be the other side of the galaxy. I can't remember, but they're basically lobbing asteroids at Earth, and there's a couple of sky marshals in this nightmarish fascist regime of the Terran Federation in Starship Troopers. And the first one is Sky Marshal Deans, who orders a land assault of the bug homeworld, and it ends up with like 400,000 people dying in like an hour, and then the next one is Sky Marshal to Hat Maru. And I just wanted to mention these briefly because Sky Marshal is a really cool name for the president, even if it's in a horrific fascist, it's kind of totalitarian regime. And B, Starship Troopers is an awesome movie. We don't really get that much from these characters, so I won't spend that very long on them, but they are present in this movie and are a kind of, well, I mean, yeah, it's a military dictatorship. It's basically the implication.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I've never seen it. I think ever since I've known you, you've been talking about this film, and I've never watched it. As I say, I always mistake it for Super Troopers. I don't think there's a liter of cola in this film once.
There is no cola in this movie. Is there
double denim?
Casper Van Dien might wear double denim. There's definitely. I mean, it's set in the future, but Casper Van Dien is kind of. He seems like he might do that at some point. But yeah, it's a very good movie. It's worth checking out. I
will check it out.
Is it Paul Verhoeven? I mean, it's Paul Verhoeven, so it's kind of very very subversive. And I think he's one of those directors. Normally, when someone hires like shitty actors to be in their movie, it's just like that's a bad choice. But because he's trying to the whole thing is like a propaganda tape, so he gets like Denise Richards and Casper Van Dien as the leads, and they're really wooden and boring. And I think it's completely deliberate, and it makes it really funny, I think. But and I do really like RoboCop, so I probably should check it out. RoboCop's a very good movie as well. We don't meet the president in that one either, unfortunately. But yeah, so moving on from Starship Troopers, because there's not that much to say about the Sky Marshals apart from the fact that they exist. I was going to mention, while we're on kind of existential threats, I think, do you say you've got another one in this kind of field as well?
No. I was talking about the similarities between Armageddon and Deep Impact, but no, I don't. You see the president very briefly in Armageddon, and that's just not something that's very memorable. But yeah. So obviously we all know the similarities between Armageddon and Deep Impact. I'm sure we'll talk about them at a later date, but that's what I was thinking.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I think the only one I've got left in this presidents who are protecting the Earth, or indeed in this case, the Earth controlled planets from an existential threat, is President Lindbergh of the Federated Territories in Luc Besson's 1997 film The Fifth Element, played by Tom Tiny Lister Jr.
Yeah, who passed away sadly.
He did, yeah.
That's great that you're saying this. Like, this was almost on my list to talk about, and that's amazing. I just love the fact that you chose
I had to put him in there. He's one of my favorite movie presidents ever, because he's just he gets nothing done. He's completely incompetent.
Yeah, and you might also recognize this actor. He's in Friday, and he also plays the huge tattooed prisoner in the Dark Knight on the boat.
Yeah. Yeah, he was also Zeus in the WWE or WWF in the 80s, or might have been, no, it would have been the 80s. So he's had a varied career, or he had a varied.
I think he also played the Kingpin in Daredevil, the Ben Affleck. Daredevil.
No, that was Michael Clark Duncan.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but I mean,
Michael Clark Duncan, who's also passed away, sadly.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, so I mean, this president really, I think, is defined by trying to talk to Corbin Dallas's mother on the phone to tell her that her son is a hero, and just getting chewed out by her. And you never see this character, but I imagine she has like rollers in her hair and is wearing a 90 and is like in a completely loveless marriage. I'm trying to think. He ignores Ian Holm, which is never a good idea. Like, and he shoots some kind of laser into Mr. Shadow, and doesn't work. You should always listen to Ian Holm, unless it's Alien. Actually, don't listen to Ian Holm in Alien.
Well, and also, it's interesting, we've also already talked about it, but this is the second film we're talking about with Gary Oldman as the bad guy.
It is, yeah. Oh, what is his character's name in this? I can't remember.
Zorg.
Zorg, that's it. He's got
I love this film.
He's got his, like, I don't know what...
He's got like a Perspex sheet on the side of his head with like... The costumes in this film were designed by Gautier. Really interesting looking film. But yeah, I think that's a good shout. President Lindbergh was definitely one that I was thinking about. I'll tell you what, this is a little bit of a sidetrack here, but see in The Fifth Element, right?
Yeah.
I had nightmares for five to 10 years about the blue alien woman singing opera.
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Not even like the scenes that precede, like that come after that. It's just that scene where she's singing. I don't know why. I probably watched this film too young, and I had nightmares about that for like 5 years.
She's kind of like, she's all wavy, and she's got tentacle head. So there's things that are unsettling about it, and I guess even if you're not thinking about them, you do see them like. Okay, I'm going to say this now. I don't understand how she had the stones in her as well. Like, what's going on there? That doesn't make any sense. I know we'll address what you just said in a second, but like, I've just had this thought. Like, she has the stones inside of her. How does that work? I guess we don't understand like alien physiology in The Fifth Element, and maybe they just have big chasms inside of their chests where they can keep rot. But that always upset me. It's just like, how did you get them in there, and how are they getting out?
Yeah, I have no idea. I never questioned that. That's where they go. That's where the element stones go.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
interesting that she scared you though. I mean, the song is quite unsettling, and it's there's. I don't know how truthful this is, but I've seen lots of YouTube videos of like singers basically saying this is technically impossible to do because the way the voice shifts is too difficult. Which I don't know if I agree with.
Technically impossible. How can you say technically impossible when you're talking about an alien? Like, there's no technicalities there. It's already admitting it's fiction. Yeah,
and there's there's some. I'm trying to remember the opera now, but the Night Queen's aria in, I think it's a Mozart opera about. It'll come to me, but that sounds a lot like what she sings, and I've literally seen a woman singing that. So I don't think it is impossible, but it's impressive nonetheless.
Well, I'll take the expert's opinion. It's impossible to the human, probably, but I do know. Like, I've got a friend who is an opera singer, and she sang at our wedding actually. And she, like, there is a thing where you have to be born. Like, it is like a natural given thing. Like, your voice, your vocal cords have to be a certain way to be able to become a professional. And if you're not born with them, no matter how much practice you do, you won't be able to do it. I'm sure you'll be able to get to a certain level, but to be the best of the best, you have to have a naturally spaced vocal cord. I don't know how you say it, like, but
okay, yeah, that sounds plausible to me. I have no education on the matter, so yeah, I will defer to your.
Well, this my friend that I'm talking about has been in an advert for a mobile phone company.
There you go.
Where she sang through a mobile phone and broke a glass. So.
There you go. Was that legit, or did they? I don't know if that's actually a thing that can happen.
It wasn't legit. I'm sure you can do it through a phone. You can definitely do it without a phone, but
you can do it without a phone. I was never sure if like you could actually sing. Yeah,
you just have to put it quite close to your mouth, and then sing a note really long and really loud at the resonant frequency of the glass.
Okay.
And then it makes the glass like shake, and then eventually it'll break.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's literally just the amount of energy you put in at the correct frequency will do it.
Well, there you go. I've learned
something.
Apparently
anyone can learn to do it. Anyone can learn.
All right, well, that's what I'm going to do in this next lockdown, is learn to break glass with my voice like I'm Banshee of the X-Men.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I'm going to say... How many more fictional presidents do you have on your list?
No, I've got no more.
You got no more? Okay, right. I'll fire through a couple then, because
okay.
So we got... This is probably, when people think about movie presidents who are presiding over potentially apocalyptic situations, this is maybe the most famous one. If not the most famous, then probably one of the most in one of the most well-regarded movies, I guess. And that is President Merkin Muffley in Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying, and Love the Bomb. Easily, to my mind, the best named president on this list. If I ever see a candidate called Merkin Muffley up for election, I am going to donate to that candidate, because we need a President Muffley.
The word Merkin.
Yeah, Merkin. We all know what a Merkin is. We all know what a Merkin is. We're not going to go into it on this podcast, right? Listener, you know what a Merkin is, and if you don't, Google it, but not at work. And Muffley is just a great surname. And actually, to be honest,
Muff. Like, to be honest with you, the word muff as well.
And Muff's just a fun word to say.
Okay. There's definitely Merkin and
Yeah.
Muffley are
He knew
very
what he was
similar
doing.
in meaning. We'll say, yeah, they
He knew what he was doing there, and likewise, actually, the Russian premier, who we don't actually see, but Merkin Muffley talks to him on the phone. Excuse me, President Muffley says to him speaks to him on the phone. His name is Premier Dmitry Kisov, which is another great name. There's a few in this movie, to be honest. It's very funny. I would say President Muffley is maybe the most incompetent president on this list. I'm just scrolling through mine now. I've got.
I mean, you don't have to think that too hard. He's pretty incompetent, I think.
Yeah, I mean, his conversation with Premier Kissoff, where he's basically they're just like exchanging platitudes, and then like when he tells him that like he says one of our base commanders went and did a silly thing, and then can you imagine how I feel about it? This, of course, in regard to a U.S. Army base commander seizing control of the nuclear arsenal and launching bombers at Russia. It's a very funny conversation, but his entire plan is, I mean, to be honest, actually, he works quite well as I don't know enough about the political climate in the 60s in America at the time, but he works quite well as kind of like a cautionary tale for good, well-meaning but weak leaders, I guess, because he like every plan that he comes up with. So like he famously lets the Russian ambassador into the war room, to which like the really antagonistic general responds, he will see the big board, and points behind himself, as if that's going to give away all their secrets. And it does actually turn out to be a relatively good idea. So he does have good ideas throughout the entire movie, but he's just so like spineless and weak-willed that he takes so long to act that unfortunately things go south fairly quickly in the end. That's a movie that's worth it. Yeah, President Muffley. I wouldn't give him a second term. Let's say that.
Yeah.
First term ended in total nuclear annihilation for America and Russia. It's hard to get re-elected on that platform.
Yeah. I will say something about Dr. Strangelove before we move off it, actually.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I know we shouldn't trust it too much, but the IMDb top 250, you know that list?
Yeah.
I think it possibly, now I'm probably overlooking something here, but I think it might be the highest rated comedy of anything on IMDb. It's 70th in the world, apparently, according to that. But, take it with a pinch of salt. But I think it seems to be a really highly respected comedy film, which, to be honest with you, although most people love comedy films and they will watch them to enjoy them, it's not really ever reflected in the rating out of 10 or 5. You know what I mean?
No, and I like comedy is kind of like, it's a bit like horror. It's famously like disrespected when it comes to sort of being considered a critical darling. I wouldn't surprise me if this is one of the highest rated ones. I think there's probably some Billy Wilder stuff in there, or like Some Like It Hot and The Apartment are probably up there as well. But
yeah, The Apartment. I was looking for The Apartment. It's not there. Parasite's there, which you could argue is, I suppose, a comedy.
I think I'd call that. I think I'd argue that's a black comedy, much like this. Actually, to be honest, it is funny, even if it's dealing with the total annihilation of the world by a nuclear apocalypse. Right. Okay. Well, so I've only got one more that we're dealing with on the subject of presidents who face extraterrestrial threat. To be honest, I've seen this movie fairly recently. I don't remember that much about this character, but that's President James Dale, as played by Jack Nicholson in Mars Attacks.
Mars Attacks was a film that I was going to try and watch in preparation for this, because I've seen it a very, very long time ago. Although I would have had to pay for it, and I wasn't going to do that, so I didn't watch it. But yeah, really strange film.
He gets he makes the mistake of the classic presidential error of he makes first contact with the aliens, and things go awry. Lots of people are killed, and then he invites the aliens into, I believe, Congress, to try it again, and they say that they're going to be peaceful this time, but they're just lying. They're not to be trusted, and they vaporize like half of the US government and then take him prisoner. And then I think he ends up getting killed by something like a hand crawling up his back and stabbing him in the spine or something. I can't exactly.
I can't remember.
But he definitely dies a fairly ignominious end, sort of suffers a fairly ignominious end, which, I mean, he doesn't strike me as the best president in the world. He's worried about the optics.
I also remember his performance was like he wasn't trying to be presidential. I remember like he sounded like Jack Nicholson in most other films.
Yeah. He sounded like Jack Nicholson reading like John F. Kennedy speeches. Like it was just like he came across as like vaguely, like as it was, quite charismatic, but not presidential or competent in the slightest. Which, you know, opens the door for those dang Martians to invade and turn Michael J. Fox into. Oh, no, he doesn't turn Michael J. Fox into a dog. They turn Sarah Jessica Parker into a dog. I can't remember what they do to Michael J. Fox. They might cut his head off.
Jason Stone, his character name is. I can't remember what they do. But
Michael J. Fox gets one of Tim Burton's like best movies, Mars Attacks. I have to say, like I really like Mars Attacks. I think Michael J. Fox gets vaporized with a gun. Pierce Brosnan, I believe, has his head cut off.
Pierce Brosnan in this is funny. He's like really posh English.
Yeah, he's like a suave scientist who's
Professor Donald Kessler.
Yeah, he falls in love with Sarah Jessica Parker, who's like an airhead girlfriend of Michael J. Fox. and then she has her head cut off and put on a dog. I think he just has his head cut off and put in a jar or something. But it's, you know, it's a tale as old as time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, right. So I've got a couple more in my fictional category. You may not have seen these, so we'll fly through them. The first one I'm going to talk about is President Thomas Tug Benson, played by Lloyd Bridges from Hotshots Part 2. The only thing I remember liking this film a lot when I was a kid. I haven't seen it recently, but I 100% remember that he has a sword fight with Saddam Hussein at one point in it, and that's enough to get him in. That's enough to get him in the list, as far as I'm concerned.
Hotshots is a series of comedy films which I never watched, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't have that Charlie Sheen background, but yeah, apparently they're funny. I was more of a Naked Gun family myself.
Yeah, but, I mean, Naked Gun is definitely, they are definitely better. Like those Zucker Brothers comedies, like Airplane, and I don't think Zucker Brothers did Naked Gun, but that kind of style of comedy, was like with Leslie Nielsen were all amazing. Does Leslie Nielsen or Frank Drebin, excuse me, must meet the president in one of those movies, surely?
I'm sure he does.
He meets the Queen in the first one, I think.
I mean, come on, lad, he should be on my list for characters who should be president.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll put him in. We'll come back to that. Frank Drebin, I mean, it would be, first off, it would be hilarious. But I mean, he'd get stuff done. He always gets his man.
Yeah, and I also will say, like, obviously, we'll talk about this sort of thing in a future podcast, I'm sure, at length. But in the Naked Gun films, they really take it's offensive, I think, to call it a trope, because it really is just a product of an unhealthy industry. But they take to the extreme the idea of the female love interest being way younger than the man. You know, like in most films, even like in a normal film which isn't a comedy, you'll have like a man who's like 55 and his love interest will be 25, and it's
Tom Cruise.
It's always the case, and it always annoys me because it is just like it's a parasite within the industry, that mindset.
Yeah.
Having said that, in Naked Gun, they properly take it to the extreme. This man is like 75, and he's always got like a woman who's like I think it's actually Priscilla Presley.
It is Priscilla Presley. He's his love interest in the Naked Gun movies, and she's like a solid 40 years younger than him. And I just love, she is so good in those movies. Like the way she just leans into all of the comedy, like handing, like when she's up on like a ladder in her attic, and you can just see her legs, and he's looking up, and he just says "nice beaver," and then she hands down a stuffed beaver. It's just like, it's so good. Frank Drebin for president, make it happen. Like Leslie Nielsen, we lost the real one when he went. He is. I'm one of the few people who will stand by him in pretty much every movie that he ever made, or every comedy he ever made. He was his early stuff when he wasn't doing comedy is fine, but it's not. It's really weird watching him in. I think it's the Poseidon Adventure he's in, where he plays if you imagine Frank Drebin's like really serious, like deadpan delivery, but without any comedy, like that's what he's like in the Poseidon Adventure. And it's really weird because you're expecting him to say something and then to like fall over like a prop or like get like shaving cream on his face, but it never happens. Right. Okay. I'm just going to fly through these last remaining fictional presidents just so we can get them ticked off the list.
Okay.
So listeners to this podcast and our other podcasts, the After Dark podcast, will know I'm a big John Carpenter fan. And Donald Pleasance is a hell of an actor. So Donald Pleasance playing President Wyatt in Escape from New York is obviously on my list. He plays it in his sort of very typical weird Donald Pleasance way, where the way he enunciates sentences doesn't really make sense. There's a bit where he's like getting beaten up by Isaac Hayes, who plays the Duke, who's kind of the main bad guy in Escape from New York. And the Duke wants him to like repeat a phrase. And then eventually, after this beating continues for several minutes, President Wyatt relents and says the phrase, but he says it in this really weird way where he goes like, "You are the Duke of New York, and President A number one," and it's just like, okay, yes, thanks Donald Pleasance for that weird line delivery there. But and I won't spoil what happens at the end, except to say that Donald Pleasance ends up straight up murdering a dude at the end of that movie, which is. It's a pretty resounding indictment of the system that Snake Plissken has been hired to protect.
Yeah, it's also not very presidential, we'll say.
No. I mean, he's not very presidential by the end of that movie, and I think he fits into. We could have a whole other section of this podcast on this if we'd actually seen the movies. But President Wyatt fits into that subcategory of presidents who need rescuing. So you talked about. Olympus Has Fallen, and there's one, I think it was White House Down. That was another like deep impact Armageddon situation where like two movies with shockingly similar premises came out within like 6 months of each other. I'm trying to think of any other movies where the president needs rescuing. I guess Air Force One kind of is that, but he rescues himself with his
he's John McClane
and a gun.
Get off my plane. I was about to say ship. Get off my plane.
That should be the sequel. C Force One,
literally just copy what Speed did. It's C Force One.
What was the subtitle of Speed 2? It was something like it was called. Hold on, I need to Google this.
Faster something,
Cruise Control. That was it. It was the fucking laziest subtitle, because it was just like, what if we had speed on a boat this time? And you could tell but when they called it Cruise Control, you can basically feel the production or the executive who works for the production company being like, what if we called it this? It doesn't really have anything to do with the movie, but it's a boat term, right? Which I guess it is.
Exactly, and I'm struggling to remember. Does Keanu Reeves die in the first one?
No, he survives, but there's a throwaway line. It's been a long time since I watched Speed 2, but I vaguely remember there being a throwaway line where Sandra Bullock says it didn't work out with him, and that's the only nod they make. Like, she's the only tie they have to the original movie because they couldn't get Keanu Reeves back because he was off doing like The Matrix.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, like he had bigger fish to fry, and Sandra Bullock, unfortunately, her career resurgence didn't happen until a few years later.
Yeah. But funny enough about Speed, actually, the other day I was talking to Ema, and we were talking about films like that, and I went, "Oh yeah, it's just like Speed." And she went, "What's that about? I've always heard the name of that film." And I said, like the whole like trope and joke about like you're on a bus and they can't stop. And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, that's that film." Like, oh my god, I didn't know what that was called.
Furiously trying to Google the Homer Simpson bit where he can't recall the name of Speed, but he keeps on saying the word Speed as he's describing it. That's
that's what he was doing.
Yeah. It has one of the best quips after killing a bad guy. In any movie I've ever heard, where after Keanu Reeves kicks pushes Dennis Hopper like up so he gets his head knocked off, he just says, "Yeah, well, I'm taller," and then and that's.
We did get him. Like that's 100%. That's a got him.
Yeah, I mean, he's earned the right to quip, but I'm not gonna stand here and tell Keanu that was a good quip. Frankly, it's lucky no one else heard it. Right. Keanu. Okay. Keanu. Yeah. This is my last one in the fictional president. It's going to be a very quick, a flying visit.
Okay.
This president doesn't even have a name. Although I'm pretty sure it's a George W. Bush analog. And this is Billy Bob Thornton's character in Love Actually, or just credited as the U.S. president, who his only input in this movie is to seduce Martine McCutcheon and cause a very significant diplomatic incident with the UK.
Which, if you're going to be a plot point, that's a good one to be.
Yeah, I mean, like Hugh Grant's kind of rejection of alliances with the US and indication that the UK is going to go alone from here on out. It all sounds very, very good and kind of chest pumping at the time, but that's not going to work out well.
We all know where that got us.
We'll see like how the economic sanctions in like 10 years' time affect the UK. Presided over like the worst recession in UK history because all of our trade deals with the US were cancelled. But I mean, Billy Bob Thornton, he's always good at playing a bastard, and this president is no exception. Yeah.
Love Actually is an interesting film. I do like it. It's something that in the UK it's watched every year at Christmas time by a lot of people. So it's a bit like it's a bit like something like Snatch, which has so many characters and so many storylines going on that there's actually not very much screen time for the president. So you can't really judge him much, I suppose. No. But yeah, Billy Bob Thornton's pretty good in most things. So.
Yeah, he's a known quantity.
Exactly.
Right, okay. Well, that's us done with fictional movies then. Fictional presidents, rather.
Fictional presidents, yeah.
Yeah, let's go on to the real presidents. And I've got to be honest, I haven't got many in this list, and I haven't seen a lot of these movies for a while. So, citation needed for everything you're about to hear.
Yeah, I think we should just keep it to a couple, and then we'll be all right. Because we could talk here all day about real presidents, but I'm happy to let you've went along for quite a while on your fictional presidents there, but I'm happy to let you go again.
Well, I'm going to go with one that I don't think you have, but then I think there's two that we share that okay. I'll get you to take the lead on. So, really, this one it's a good performance, but it's also just a really good movie. And that's Frank Langella playing Richard Nixon in Frost Nixon, which is a Ron Howard movie. He gets the sweatiness down perfectly, and that kind of that vaguely sort of horrific Nixon-esque quality to his interactions with anyone. But he does exude that kind of, I guess power is the term you'd use for it, but it's a great performance, and the way that he and Martin Sheen, I always get them mixed up. Michael Sheen is the British, the Welsh one. Play off of each other as David Frost and Richard Nixon in this interview is fantastic. So that's well worth checking out if you're looking for. That's
a film that I've always intended to watch. I'm going to be honest with you, and I haven't seen it. I think I will definitely check it out now. I think I've always heard it's great. And I think I will check that out. Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in that era of American politics too, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I think
everything is called that now, something Gate,
Yeah. I think it does take some liberties with that stuff. I'm not that well versed in it, so I can't. When I watch it, I'm just like, wow, did it really happen this way? And then I read about it. It's like, oh,
yeah. That's a rule of thumb, which I think most people, if you listen to this podcast, know that we do that. We don't watch a film and assume it's correct, in terms of the historical value of it.
The Coen brothers taught us that if any movie ever begins with based on a true story, you can guarantee at least 90% of it is completely fictionalized.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, why don't you give us your real presidents then? Because I think we share the same ones.
Okay, so the first real president I'll mention is it's going to be Abraham Lincoln, which is played by Daniel Day-Lewis in the film Lincoln. Daniel Day-Lewis's third Oscar, I believe.
Yeah, he was on a tear because he got one for My Left Foot, and then like there was a 20
years later,
and then he got one for There Will Be Blood, and then got one for this.
Yeah, so obviously he's brilliant in this. One thing that's very memorable about the way he plays this president is that it's been sort of every time growing up I saw Abraham Lincoln being portrayed, he had a very deep, voice, great orator. Whereas apparently, accounts from the time said that he had quite a meek voice. He was quite sort of high-pitched voice, and Daniel Day-Lewis really tried to put that into him. So it made his portrayal of Lincoln much more memorable and much more sort of singular. I think since then that there's more people who've done it that way, and maybe even before then there was too. But this was the moment in which I realized that, and to be honest with you, I really like it. It's Steven Spielberg is the director, obviously. And yeah, just a great portrayal, I think. Honest Abe, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I remember really liking this movie when I saw it. I don't remember that much about it, but to be honest, I think that's the case with a lot of biopics for me, where it all just kind of blends into one.
It's like a history lesson.
I remember like the sort of reedy voiced manner in which Daniel Day-Lewis performed was really interesting, because it's certainly not how my version of Abraham Lincoln from Bill and Ted was performed, so it caught me by surprise. Apparently this is more like I choose to subscribe to the Bill and Ted version, to be honest, but I remember this being a good performance of a man I know very little about.
Yeah, exactly. Also around the time, I remember there was a really famous photo of Daniel Day-Lewis in like a coffee shop, dressed like Abraham Lincoln, drinking coffee. Yeah, like I think because obviously he's a method actor.
Yeah, talking about method actors. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was sitting in a coffee shop. I think there's a famous photo. I don't think he was in the full thing, but he did have like the hair and like the beard and all, and he was like sitting there as Abraham Lincoln drinking coffee in a coffee shop.
7 minutes ago, I asked for a croissant.
Yeah. Just it reminds me of the scene in the restaurant in There Will Be Blood. You know, imagine you just took Daniel Plainview from There Will Be Blood and just replaced him with Abraham. Like swap them. It's like
just swap
the
them
characters.
Around. Do it like Freaky Friday. Those characters into different roles. Yeah, cool. Okay, well, yeah, Lincoln is, I would say, like, as a character, again, I don't know that much about Abraham Lincoln, but I'd say he's possibly the most portrayed president. I'm sure there are loads of examples of Lincoln in movies. It's going to be either him, George Washington, or maybe JFK. Seem like the obvious
Will
ones.
Forte plays him in the Lego movies.
Plays Lincoln.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. And that's the definitive portrayal, actually.
Yeah.
Now we're getting right down to it.
Yeah, it's like when people list who their favorite Joker is. Some idiots include Zach Galifianakis from the Lego Batman movie.
I mean, listen, he's better than what's his face from
Jared Leto.
Yeah, better than Jared Leto.
Yeah, don't tell Jared Leto that; he'll come after us. Like, takes that very personally, actually. Apparently,
come find me, Jared. 30 Seconds to Mars is shit as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to. I think you've got this one as well, but I'll say it just in case you don't. Do you have W on yours?
No.
Okay,
I think I alluded to the idea of having George W. Bush somewhere. But I have him in a different film, so you talk about yours first.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll just do this quickly because this is another one
that's Brolin, isn't it?
It is. It's Josh Brolin. It's the Oliver Stone movie W, playing George W. Bush. To be honest, I mean, I think Josh Brolin had a bit of a thankless task in this, because playing Bush at this point, he was kind of seen as a bit of a buffoon by the arts, the left leaning world, and I don't think Oliver Stone was that interested. He didn't really want to make something that was just a hatchet job. Like, I think he actually wanted to depict the character. So Brolin had to kind of find the comedy in some of the more ridiculous things that he did in his youth and during his presidency, while still having some kind of gravitas about the character, or charisma about the character. I think he did a decent enough job, but I will say that the main thing I remember about this movie is Richard Dreyfuss as Dick Cheney. He plays like this amazingly kind of like menacing figure in the shadows who's actually running everything, which so it's perhaps appropriate that his performance is a thing that really stands out to me from this movie, because by all accounts Dick Cheney was the guy who was actually running that presidency.
Yeah, exactly. Which I to be honest with you, when you look back at the history of it, it perhaps, in my opinion, it perhaps lets George W. Bush off a little bit, which when it shouldn't. But like, I think these portrayals of, like, I think George W. Bush definitely lent in to the idea that he was viewed as a buffoon.
Oh yeah,
because it meant that there was some of the harsher decisions that they made in that administration. Meant that everyone blames Dick Cheney, which, fair enough. Fair enough. Let's be honest. But what I mean is, like, just because George W. Bush can't remember sayings when he's giving a speech, doesn't mean that he also didn't have a hand in it.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, again, not to get too real, but I think the direction the Republican Party took after George W. Bush has helped a lot with that, because there has definitely been a movement to look back at George W. Bush with rose-tinted glasses and be like, remember the heady days when the president was just an idiot and not an idiot and a racist and and all this other stuff.
Which is a dangerous road to go down, but at the same time, you understand it, like, because, you know, it just, to be honest with you, this film, I think it's really interesting that Oliver Stone directed this film. It was released in 2008, which is when he was still president.
Yeah.
It speaks to me like Oliver Stone being like, I need to get my George W. Bush film out before anyone else does. I want to be the film.
Yeah.
I want to have the film. Like, it's a bit early. Well, I think that's the thing. Like, we're talking about 12 years, 13 years out now. You need to have the distance, I think, between the political acts and the portrayal in a film for people. That's how I personally feel, because like everything wouldn't have been known at that point. Like, a lot of the films that have come out these days, where they know more about what happened in the administration on both in both agendas, I'll say. But like, at the time when it's still going on, you know, how much are you really going to know? You know?
Yeah, well, I maybe this was Oliver Stone, because he made JFK in like 1991, I think, which is obviously like 30 years after the assassination. So maybe he was like, I missed the boat on that JFK one, so I'm gonna get in really early on this W one.
Yeah, Oliver Stone is literally just like a YouTuber who's like trying to ride the crest of the algorithm.
Yeah, he'll get it right for Joe Biden, and he'll do his Biden movie like about 10 years after Biden's presidency finishes, and we'll all be like, you nailed it, Oliver Stone, good job, third time's the charm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because like there's three constants in the world: life and death count as one, taxes, and Oliver Stone will live forever and keep making these films. Right. Okay. So my next film about a real president is actually the same president, but I'm going with Adam McKay's 2018 Vice.
Oh, I never saw this. Was it good?
Oh yeah, you should watch it. It's Christian Bale plays Dick Cheney. So they focus on Dick Cheney here. Now, I think there's a conversation to be had about whether or not it's correct to focus on these figures from history in a film, because eventually in the film they do have to put things in for you to humanize him and make you empathize with him in certain ways. I think by the end of the film, if you empathize with him, I think they've really put enough in there to maybe make you not empathize with him by the end.
Yeah.
But there's like certain things like Dick Cheney, for example, very famously has a lesbian daughter, and therefore he never would have, when he was in politics, he never would have publicly come out against gay marriage. He did eventually betray that by his daughter going against gay marriage later in life. And because it wasn't him, I'm sure he was like, well, I didn't technically say it, but his family still did betray that family member in that regard. But it also shows a bit of the hypocrisy between personal life and it's okay if it happens to me, Yeah. But yeah, like the George W. Bush in this is played by Sam Rockwell.
Oh, okay. That's I can see that. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, and he plays it in such an interesting way, like, because obviously he does lean into the sort of the goofy as well, which I think you're never going to get a George W. Bush film where it doesn't, because even if you just watch an interview of George W. Bush, he himself leans into the goofy. So so Sam Rockwell plays him, and there's a fantastic scene, which is what I'll just mention this one, then we can move on, because we are going quite long. But Sam Rockwell has a moment where Christian Bale comes to him as Dick Cheney and is trying to convince him to... So Sam Rockwell, of George W. Bush, wants Dick Cheney as his vice president. But Dick Cheney is like sort of left politics, and he's working in the private sector, doesn't really want to. And vice president isn't really an important job, and it sort of is very much just like a sort of, I don't know, like a face and a name, but you're not really doing anything. So basically it has this really cool thing with Dick Cheney was an avid angler. In fact, I think that was his code name, Angler. So basically, throughout the time of the conversation where Dick Cheney's trying to convince George Bush to let him have more responsibility if he was to become his vice president, it's got like cutaways to like him like reeling in fish and stuff, like catching him on the lure. But so basically he's like, Dick Cheney's like, so I'll just do like the unimportant tasks, things like military, foreign policy, leave that up to me. And then George W. Bush was like, you got a deal? The way it's portrayed is very much like just George W. Bush just had no clue what was going on.
And I could 100% believe that was the conversation as it happened.
But earlier on in the film, like they were in the in the late 80s, I believe, before was it before H.W. Bush was president? It was like it wasn't during it anyway. I think it was before.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how Jeb Bush, he's going to be the president, right?
Yeah.
And then like you hear like a table crashing in the background, and they turn around and there's George W. falling over drunk, right? And I thought to myself, like, that is the meme of him, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, would they have included that in the film if there wasn't at least one person saying, I was at a big political party and he fell over drunk? Like, it must have at least happened once.
Oh, yeah. Like, and I could believe it as well. It's funny that you mentioned Jeb Bush as well, because literally the only reason I know who Jeb Bush is because of the episode of The Simpsons where H.W. Bush moves in opposite Homer.
Yeah. Well, Jeb actually ran for president in 2016.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
and he was one of the victims to Trump's ramblings.
I did not know that. Well, there you go. I've learned something. I've learned that Jeb is like a less successful politician than his brother. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to very quickly roll through my could have been presidents list because, as you say, we are running a little long.
I've got one.
All right,
you give me yours. Yours are actually prepared, whereas I've got the best answer. My answer is the only real answer.
Yeah, we can't start the show with a showstopper. So let me go through these three.
You better not say mine.
I don't think I will. Well, we'll see. Let's see. Okay, so the first one is Ransom Stoddard, who is the character portrayed by James Stewart in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Mm-hmm. Not a president. I believe he's a congressman. But
great choice though.
Yeah, I think he would have been James Stewart would have been a good president. Let's be honest. Yeah. He's a pretty cool guy. And he understands the value of lying. Like when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. He's already learned that. Like it does kind of chip away at the moral fiber of his character and leaves the ending of that movie with a sort of bittersweet tinge. But he'll be a great politician as a result of it.
That's great. I like that choice.
Okay, so we got a couple of non-party politician. I'm going to expose here that I don't really understand how third-party candidates in America work here. So
I think it's just you say I want to be president, go on the ticket, and then if people vote for you, they're kind of throwing their vote away.
Okay, well, so the first one is, and this is one of my favorite movies, is Hal Philip Walker, who technically doesn't appear in this movie, but he's a character that's constantly referenced in Robert Altman's Nashville from 1975, and he's a replacement party candidate. And in fact, both of the next two characters I've got are from movies in the 70s, because I guess American politics was kind of rocked by the Watergate scandal in the early 70s, and then a bunch of movies came out where, like, he's a replacement party candidate. He's not part of the two-party system and that's a very deliberate choice by Altman, because he's depicting problems in American politics that he is basically saying that, like, these politicians are rising up to replace the corrupt two-party system that existed in the 1970s.
If only.
Yeah, that would have been nice. But yeah, his so as I say, he doesn't appear. But his party or his campaign slogan is "for doing some replacing," which is great. Like, and the apostrophe on "doing" and "replacing" are both in there. So I feel like that's really important. And my last one is presidential candidate Charles Palantine from Taxi Driver as Martin Scorsese in 1976, and he is in that movie briefly. He shares a taxi ride with Travis Bickle, Robert De Niro's character, and basically tells him he's a fine, upstanding citizen, and hopes that he can count on his vote, which, if you've seen Taxi Driver and you know what kind of character Travis Bickle is, says a lot about that presidential candidate. But it's another one where I think it's very cynical about the political system in America, and they don't. I don't know if they say he's not part of the two-party system or they just don't mention the party that he belongs to. Yeah. But either way, it's a pretty grim depiction of the political system in America.
Okay, fair enough. Cool. All right, good choices. Good choices. You stuck to the characters who are already in the political world.
That's true. I did. Yeah.
Really interesting to me. I've went outside the box for one of mine,
Okay.
but which is the correct answer. I'll have you know. The first one is not the correct answer, but it is a good answer. And my first one is Mayor Goldie Wilson from Back to the Future.
Oh yeah, he's got his eyes on the presidency. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
So Mayor Goldie Wilson, obviously, he's you know, even his big smile will do it for you. He started off as a cleaner in the cafe. And then by the time the 25 years later, or 30 years later in 85, he's the mayor.
Yeah.
It's just a perfect story. Just a perfect story.
Oh, yeah.
My other one, which I think is the correct answer, and I think you'll share that. Let's imagine, right? An asteroid is coming to hit the Earth.
Right.
Just like in Armageddon and just like in Deep Impact. However, instead of going down into the bunker with all the other important people.
Yeah.
This guy is running up the mountain, getting to higher ground to avoid the tidal wave with the rest of the folk, right?
Okay.
Someone falls over. They've got a broken leg, right? And he says, this is so stupid. But he says, right? They say, you know, it's my baby. You know, I have to carry my baby. He says, well, I can't carry your baby for you. But I can carry you. Samwise Gamgee should be the president of America.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. Like, and you know, he's proven that he's incorruptible as well. The only ring bearer to ever willingly give up the ring.
I think that says it all.
If you're not corrupted by the One Ring, you're not going to be corrupted by, you know, big business trying to buy you with with campaign donations.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Samwise Gamgee, 2024. Well, I guess 2028. Give Biden 2 terms. And you know, more hobbits in the White House as well.
Yeah, exactly. And just let them be free. No shoes. You know, let them be free. Let them be free. That's what I think.
I was going to make a comment about the current president and shoelessness. Then I'm not going to do it. And I hope you're thankful for that, listener. We're steering clear of the political nightmare at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Amazing. Okay, yeah. Well, Samwise Gamgee is an excellent choice. But yeah, I mean that pretty much wraps us up here for our list of movie presidents, which really just leaves us with one simple question to answer before we leave you for another week here, and that is, Anthony, what is your favorite movie this week?
It's a movie that I'm going to be talking about next week, and it's called Rock the Casbah.
Oh, I've never seen that. Okay. In fact, I don't even know if I know what that movie is, but we'll find out next week.
We'll find out.
My favorite movie is Independence Day. So yeah, I guess tune in next week for Anthony talking about Rock the Casbah. It's going to be a movie diary, so we'll talk about everything we've seen since the last time we did one of those, which was a week ago. Thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot for the use of our theme song. Check out their other stuff down in the link below. And yeah, share the show with your friends, subscribe, like us, do all of that stuff. And thank you for checking us out. We will see you next week. So that's goodbye from me.
Please like us.
Yeah, please like us. Please. It's important. Just tell your friends to like us as well. It's so important. But yeah, so goodbye from me, and we will see you next week.
And cut.